This is a video on the disassembly and inspection of a Danfoss high-pressure humidification pump. I should actually say Danfoss high-pressure pump and not use the word humidification, but within this scenario, that's what it was used for, is humidification. So this pump has been in service and it's giving the customer some trouble. It's not maintaining pressure so well, and it's being a bit on the noisy side. There's some knocking that's going on. It's been in operation for around 18,000 hours. So we're going to take it apart and see if we can figure out what might be wrong with it. And as I do this, I'll explain how it works a little bit and how it goes together, or how it comes apart, and how it may go back together, although that will probably be a different video. But this video is mainly disassembly and inspection. We're looking at the shaft portion of the pump. This is the shaft that actually connects onto a coupling that connects onto an electric motor. And this is the two holes that actually hold this pump onto a bell housing. Now there is a manual on this procedure also by Danfoss. So the manual is actually pretty good. It has pictures in it, the same pictures that I'm going to show you here as we take it apart. But this gives you a little bit better idea of what the pump looks like on the side, and you're going to see this in the movie, but this is the side view of it. And this manual is, like I say, quite good. It really is a picture manual, and you can see that they're starting to take the pump apart here, and that's what I'm going to show you in this particular video. Again, you can get the same thing out of this manual, but the video is going to be, a little bit more informative than the manual. So we're going to start this video here and show you how this pump comes apart. Four millimeter Allen wrench. This is the top plate, we'll call it, that I'm taking apart. Having trouble getting this one off because there's a little bit of green Loctite, we'll call it, that I had to get out of there. Now you're going to see next that I have to put this thing in a vise in order to get this top plate out. And all you're doing is kind of loosening it up. There's actually a rubber O-ring that is part of that top plate that has to, that's what actually seals it. Have a little difficulty getting this one apart. I've done a few other ones where it's been a little easier, but on it, to a degree, it shouldn't be this difficult. I don't know if it's the vise that I'm not used to, or I can't look at it down below. Generally, I've had it on a different vise where there's a side view here. I'm inspecting it. But it does pop off here very shortly. And I crank on this vise. There we go. Got it off. And that doesn't seem to gouge the stainless steel at all. That stuff is so hard. But I'm going to stop the video here. Now, part of what this is a seal. This is a ceramic seal here that does sit against another seal to prevent water from leaking out of it. And then the O-ring that is around this whole outer edge here, you can barely see it, and we'll see it here in a second. That's also the seal that, here we go. I'm looking to see if there's any gouges. Looks pretty good. And you can see that rubber seal that goes around the whole thing. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually, well, first I'm going to take off this bleeder. That's a bleeder screw. Get that label out of the way. It's one of the warning labels that is on the Danfoss pump. This one actually talks about if the pump is submerged in water, you can actually take this pump and submerge it in water, as long as the motor is capable of going underwater also. But so the next one I'm going to do is take off this other part of the seal. This rubber part right here actually goes up against that ceramic part that I showed you a little while ago and creates the seal. Now this is a little bit tricky to get this off. There actually is a couple metal pieces that you have to work with in order to get it off, and there's 4 pieces total in here that I'm going to be moving or taking off. That's part of the seal. And then there's going to be another part of a seal that is in there. First, sorry, you can't see the video. My head's not quite in the right way, but there's a spring in there that I'm getting out. Again, part of the seal to put pressure on it to keep it, again, sealed. Now here's the little tricky part. There is another part of this seal. You got to get down get down underneath a piece of metal that's part of this other seal, and make sure you try not to damage the rubber. And you can do that. And you just work around to get this out of there, because you can't take the pump apart anymore unless you get this one seal out of there. Again, you want to be careful not to damage the rubber. And once you start to see this piece of metal that is around the rubber, you can realize that, oh yeah, I'm just sliding it up with this piece of metal, and it's not a big problem. And you got to go around, as you can see, 5-6 times until you get that up far enough. Now, this pump is water lubricated, and so you saw some water come out of it, and there's actually some water, around that seal there, so that's helping it slide. And there you saw a little bit of that washer that's around the rubber ring. Yeah, it's just about got it now. There it is. So there I'm pointing out the little rubber washer that actually goes around, or the metal washer that goes around the rubber ring. There's actually a lip here, and then there's a lip down here, and the ring goes in between these 2 lips. Now, this lip is actually a little wider, and this one's a little narrower. Now this piece actually goes and is inserted into the other piece that I just took out. Now I think I'll show that to you here shortly. So there's one other piece that I'm getting out of here. It's actually like a washer with a lip on it. I don't know exactly what it does, but Again, generally they seem to fall out pretty well, but this one's taken a little bit of work to get out. There it goes. So that guy right there, you can see it's a washer, but it's got a little edge to it. That's where the spring actually sits on that. So here's where I'm going to show you, I think. These two pieces actually go together. When you take them apart, they pull apart. And it's part of the nature of taking it apart. But you can see here, I think I get a little closer. Oh, I guess not. But those two pieces have to be assembled or put back together. So now I'm pointing out a couple of O-rings that are part of the assembly. And now we're just going to take apart this, I'll call it a bell housing. This guy right here, there's 4 bolts that take it apart. That pretty much takes the guts of the pump apart. This isn't going to work. I got to put it in the vise. I should have known that they're going to be a little tighter than that, but they're really not on there real tight. And once we get this apart, again, there's going to be another large O-ring that seals these two pieces together to prevent any leakage. And those O-rings, from what I've seen, are typically in good shape. You don't have to replace them. But you have to be careful when you put them back together that you don't damage the O-ring by getting it caught in the edge of the pieces, so it doesn't rip the O-ring. So you do take care when you put it back together. Now I should be using a wrench, but I'm using this crescent wrench, and it's a very high quality crescent wrench, so I'm not concerned about doing any damage to any of the bolts at all. Now this is spring loaded, these two pieces, and as I loosen this up, you're going to see that it starts to expand, and that's because there's a spring in here that is pushing the two pieces apart. Again, the spring is in there to make things fit for assembly and for operation, but you'll notice that as I take it apart, it starts to widen these two pieces on their own, and that's the spring just pushing them apart. There, you can see it. And because they push themselves, it's pushing itself apart like that, I go around screw after screw to get it even as it comes apart, because if you take off one bolt, it's going to tip or crank one way quite a bit, and you might have trouble. You'd have trouble getting the rest of the bolts out. There you can see how I'm pushing it back together, and that spring is pushing it apart. And you'll see the spring shortly. Now you're seeing a couple other nuts on that housing, and those are bleed ports. This guy right here is a bleed port on the suction side. Well, actually, I don't use that bleed port. There's a bleed port on the other side that I use to bleed the air out of the pump before I start it up. So I just about got it apart here. Oh, I'm showing you a pin. There's an alignment pin that makes sure that this assembly goes together in the proper order. proper direction, I would say. There's the other bleeder port that I talked about. There's that pin again. And we just about got it apart. Last one's a little difficult because of that spring action. There we go. Okay, so here it's going to come apart. All right, let's stop the video here for a second. So you've got a few different components in here, and it's not really that complicated. Here are the pistons and their shoes, and the pistons move back and forth within this housing here. And this plate right here is kind of like, I call it a wobbler plate. And it's in there at an angle. It's tipped at an angle. So as the shaft rotates this particular device here, these shoes of the pistons go up and down against this plate. And you'll understand that once you get it apart and look at it a little bit. But basically this plate being at an angle pushes these pistons up and down, back and forth. And then this part right here is a valve assembly that lets the water in and water out. But then again, this whole thing is water lubricated. This whole thing is always engulfed in water inside the case. And so you can see that it's very important that this unit have water in it all the time. So if you run water dry or lack water within this thing, it's going to damage it pretty well. So you can't run it without water at all. I mean, you can run it for a very short period of time, but after 15, 20, 30 seconds, you're going to start to do some damage. Now, to do some real bad damage to it, you're going to have to run it for longer than that, but it's not going to take much. So we'll continue on here. Now this pump's got a little dirt in it. And I think it has to do with the hose assembly that was attached to it. Since it is deionized water in here, the hose, which was a rubber hose, and I'm going to stop that here. Now you saw the pistons. This is the piston assembly with the shoes. We'll go a little further. There. So those are the little pistons that go in and back and forth within the whole cylinder barrel here. And here's the spring that I talked about that actually holds or pushes the thing apart. So that spring is pushing up against this hole right here. And so that's what's pushing it to make it come apart. Now, this is worn here a little bit. You can see where it's black here. There's some sort of coating. I don't know what the name of it is. But the pistons are supposed to have all this black coating all around it. And a lot of it has worn off because this particular pump has got like 18,000 hours on it. And this pump does make a lot of noise, and you'll see shortly here why it makes so much noise. So now I'm going to take the rest of it out. There's the shaft that comes out, and now what we're looking at here is, well, there's the spring that I talked about. And then there's another little bushing in here that surrounds the spring. Now, this is, like I said, this is the valve, part of the valve plate assembly. This is one half of it, and the other half of it's on the part that I just took apart. I'm going to clean this up now. So there's the other half of the valve plate. So that piece stays stationary, and that other piece of the valve plate turns when the pump turns. And through these openings here within this half and the other half, it lets water in and it discharges water out. So it's kind of an ingenious way of creating a pump, but that's the valve assembly. Now the idea behind this video is to see what's wrong with this pump, why it's making so much noise, and whether it can be repaired or not. So as I inspect this pump, I look at it and I'm realizing that, well, as I look at it, the valve assembly, the two valve plates, they look pretty good. But the pistons look, a bit worn. So there's also a pin here that holds this together. Here I'm taking off this part of the valve plate, and there I'm showing you the pin that aligns the valve plate onto that that section of the body. That's the suction and discharge water side section of the body. I put the pin back where it goes, and you can see. I'll stop the video here. Yeah, this is where the water comes in and the water goes out. Comes in at low pressure, goes out as high pressure, and these are some of the ports that let the water in and let the water out, and then that valve assembly does its job. So you can examine these things, and the manual will talk about how you examine them and what you're doing is looking for excessive wear. And again, I examined this valve plate here, these two valve plates, and they seem to be fine. There didn't seem to be a heck of a lot of excess wear, even with 18,000 hours on them. But you'll see here in a little bit that the pistons are where the wear is, and they're a little sloppy. I've taken a few of these pumps apart, maybe 4 or 5 times. This is the first time I've inspected one and tried to repair it. And you'll see in a video upcoming how I did repair it. Actually, I did repair one pump. I've got a few of them that were bad, and I took the pieces from a few pumps and made one good working pump. There's, I'm pointing out where the pin lines up. You can see that I'm lining the pin up, so that positions that part of the valve plate. Now this part does come apart also, and this is the other half of the valve plate that is pressed into the piston casing, we'll call it. Takes a little bit to get it apart. Yeah, I actually have to get another screwdriver. 2 screwdrivers is what you need. I'm seeing if I can do it with one, but it just doesn't work. You've got to get a screwdriver and pry from both sides in order to get it to go. I got to answer the phone here. Hang on a second. Okay, we're back. Get this video going again. You can see I got another screwdriver. I'm trying to get that in the right spot. It's a bigger screwdriver. I finally decided, yep, this one is not going to come apart without 2 screwdrivers. I've done it in the past with 1 screwdriver. But this one just isn't going to do it. I don't know. Probably because it's got so many hours on it, maybe. That's being difficult. Oh, there, I stopped the video and I worked on it for a while to get it out. So there it is. That's part of the valve assembly. And there are some spacers and some O-rings there. You can see a couple of them fell off. So on each one of these ports, there are 2 pieces. There's like a ceramic, I'll call it a ceramic, a black. Yeah, it's not ceramic, it's something else, but it's a black material, and then there's a rubber O-ring. Now here I'm going to go in here and get them out because they're kind of stuck in there. You can see that there's 2 pieces there. So some of it came out all right, some of it didn't. Both of those have 2 pieces, it looks like. Here is just the O-ring. So, and then we'll put it together. I'll show you here in a minute. Here's another O-ring. That's it. So when you put these back together, you actually get a spray bottle of water. So the lubrication for putting it back together is water. But I'm just kind of cleaning out some of the debris that is collected in there. Very light amount of debris. And that debris is from breakdown of a hose. Since this isn't deionized water, the hose it's a synthetic rubber, but it's still not quite good enough to not break down when the DI water comes through it. Now that could have been part of the falling out of this particular pump, but I've dealt with some before, and yeah, it's hard to know whether that's the case. Now here's where I inspect the pistons in the shoes, and this is where I find out that there's a lot of play within this shoe. This is supposed to be relatively tight fit between that piston and that shoe, and I'm finding out with this particular pump that they're pretty worn. Now I haven't discovered it yet, but I will here shortly. There we go. Oh, that one, I could tell that one was a little loose, but that's not the real bad one that we're going to find here shortly. There it is. A lot of slop in that one. Good good 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch, and that's supposed to be tight fitting. So, and all of these pistons within there had a little bit of slop, but that one was the worst. This got a little bit, and again, it's very loose on that shoe, and it's supposed to be there's supposed to be a little bit of bind to it, or it's supposed to be nice and firm and tight. You can still move it around, but these are just quite loose and sloppy. So that's what's causing all the noise on this particular pump. There, I'm giving you a close-up of how much that's moving. That's bad. So that's what 18,000 hours did to it. And you know, maybe the breakdown of the hose had some of that, some part of what caused it to go bad. But now here I'm putting the valve plate back together. So I think I just put an O-ring in there, and here's the other one where I just have to put the O-ring, and the other part is already there. Now these last two, I'm putting them. I'm putting them to. Hang on here. Somehow I lost my video. Okay, I got the video back going. Somehow it locked up on me, but so I'm putting that washer back in there and the O-ring. And again, they just came out of there when I was pulling that valve plate out of the piston body. So I'm pointing to the bad component there. This is the piece where the pistons go in and the shoes sit. The underside of the shoe sits right there on that portion. And again, that black color, that's the way it's supposed to be. That is some sort of coating. And again, I apologize for not knowing what that is, but that's a coating that's on there. And it's really, I think it's part of the lubrication process for water. I mean, it doesn't wear out. It doesn't, bind when water gets on it. Very smooth. So I'm showing how this goes. The valve plate goes back together. I'm not putting it completely together. Now I am putting it together, but I did forget to put the spring. There we go. I think I'm doing it. Oh, I'm checking for wear to see how it feels in there. You can have a little bit of slop, but I'm not going to end up using this pump because those shoes are so bad. But what I'm doing here is I'm reassembling it just to put it back into an order so there's not parts laying all over. Yeah, I forgot to put this in there. And you can get the right names of these parts from the manual. In fact, this video is getting a little bit long, but it shows somebody taking it apart and putting it back together. This is a little tricky, but it's not too bad. There we go. So this just sets back in there, just like that. So we are getting to a degree towards the end of the video. Again, what I'm doing is putting this back together. Pin alignment, again, there's the pin. There's the other pin that I showed you at the beginning of the movie. And that lines up with, oh, there's that pin. And then here's where the other one goes, right there. And from the other part of the casing, that other pin lines up right there. And that keeps everything in line. There's another good look at that, where the other pin goes. So I am lining up these pins so that when I put it together, when I lift it together, they're going to be in the right area. There. I'm showing you the two spots. And the whole thing goes back together about as easy as it came apart. It's not too bad. You know, as I take more and more of these apart, I'm finding out that, you know, it is either piston wear or well, shoe wear, piston shoe wear, or valve plate wear. And I do successfully rebuild a pump. You'll see in the next video here of me looking at actually 3 different pumps that have been taken apart, and I take pieces from each one of the pumps, or a few pieces from here and a few pieces from there, and put together a good solid working pump again. Now I don't put this completely back together, and again it's because I don't want to put this washer that you see up here back in, because that's the kind of the most tricky and difficult thing to put together and to take apart again. So actually I put those nuts in there loose. Now this washer for the spring goes in there. I'll put the spring back in there. And then I'm just going to take these 2 pieces and set them in there on top, because they have to be assembled. You know, those 2 pieces that you just saw, I'm scrubbing back here. We'll look at it again. These 2 pieces, they have to be assembled back together. This particular part of this rubber gasket here actually goes inside of this particular part of another gasket. They assemble back together, and it's a little tricky to get them back together, but once you look at it, you can figure out how they go back together. There's actually a nub. Let's see if we can, there. This particular part right here slides into a groove on this particular ring. We'll see if we see it here. There's the groove right there that this particular part slides into, and then that rubber part right here actually goes into this other part. So they assemble. And really the way you do it is you take this ring off this particular part of the gasket, and it does come off, and then you take this rubber part of the gasket and stick it in there, and then you put the ring back on. So that's a bit of how you do it. I should have a video on how to do that, but I haven't got it. So I'm just going to set them there for now. And we're getting near the end of this video here because I have put it all back together. Not working, but I just inspected it, and we got a good idea what's wrong with it. Those pistons in those shoes are bad. I think everything else is all right. And that's it. Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever. Okay. That's it for now. I'm going to add another video onto this to show the 3 different pumps that I took apart, and some more things that went some more things I found on some other pumps that are bad, and I'll put one good one together. That's it for now. Talk to you later. So this is a video that shows 3 different Danfoss pumps disassembled. 3 different pumps that failed over time, and each of them failed for a little bit different reasons. So I shot this with a GoPro camera like I did the other videos previous to this, but this time, since there isn't any background noise and I'm in my shop, I do talk my way through this particular video. So this is an introduction here, and shortly I'm going to actually start the video and explain what happened to these 3 different pumps, and well, we'll just go from there. Okay, we've got 3 different pumps here that have failed at various times and for various reasons, and I just wanted to show you the 3. I'm going to try to put one back together to see if I can make one in some good working order, but I was going to go over each one of these pumps to a small degree to tell you what's wrong with them. This first one is the one I took apart yesterday, I'll say, that is involved in the movie that I made for training. And really this one, all the pistons are loose. And you can see here I can wobble this shoe here, and that's not good. That's what was making all the noise on this. And again, it has 17,000 hours. That one was the worst, but all of them have a little bit of wobble in the shoe. So all these pistons are bad, and you can see that they're worn here. How serious that wear is, I don't quite know. Again, here's you can hear it. So here's the next one. Same thing, there's some wobble in there and there's some wear there. So that's what's wrong with this one. This next one, can't specifically remember the history of it, but this has got a bad valve plate on it for sure. If we take a look at this valve plate, it's really grooved right here. In fact, much worse than I thought it would be. So something got in there and wore that valve plate. And if we look at the other side of it, which is this guy right here, you'll see that there's right here, there's almost like something got stuck right there, and it's not that it's gouged, but it's not smooth, it's rough right in that area. So this has got some bad valve plates in it. And then this last one here seems to be pretty good, but it did have one tight piston, and it's actually one of them. I'm changing them out. It's one of them over here that I'm replacing with them. Yeah, this one right here, it's really, really tight in its socket, and it just binds too much, and I think that's what was causing some problems, some excessive, well, there was some noise in this pump also. So that one was actually over here. So this is the one I'm actually going to try to rebuild. I replaced one of the pistons that I think is a problem. The valve plates, I questioned this valve plate too, which I haven't decided whether I'm going to use this valve plate, which is very flat on this surface here. I thought there should be a ridge. This is the stationary part. This is the rotating part. And if we look at it closely here, you can see the shininess in it. And there's just very flat across there. So, but if we look at this valve plate here that's got 16,000 hours on it, it's supposed to have a ridge on it, and it looks pretty good. Like this, it's kind of a ridge that's up high, and again, unless there's a little difference in the valve plate because of the age of the differences in age of the unit. This one's got an interesting thing on it also, is that there's some little notches in here in the valve plate, and I don't know if those are some water relief areas or what. And then there's a little notch right there where that opening is, that you can probably see it. So I'm going to put this one back together with a new piston, and I haven't decided what valve plate it is yet that I'm going to use. But just wanted to show you these 3 units that I've got to take parts from and try to put together and see if I can make one that works good and sounds good. Basically, it's the sound. They start making noise, some knocking, and as I learn a little bit more about these things, sometimes this little knocking noise that you might get on is not a bad thing. It makes a little noise, but they can still run a long time with a slight bit of knocking noise. And that's what it was with this first one here. That's got 18,000 hours on it. They were making some noise, and all of a sudden the noise got worse and worse and worse. And then when I do take it apart, all the pistons are very are loose in their sockets, and one of them is very loose. So that's it for this video. I'm going to add it. Talk to you later. Okay, so this is the conclusion of the pump repair, pump disassembly and assembly. And I did put one together. If you recall, I had 3 pumps here, and this last one is not there because I put it back together. And I replaced it with a couple of, or I made sure all the pistons and the shoes were good ones. I did replace, I think, 2 or 3 of them in that one with better ones from some of the other units. I did use the valve plate that was over here on this unit. So I did put a different valve plate in there. And I put it back together. And here it is down here. So what I've got here is the electric motor and bell housing and the pump. And I've got it hooked up to a variable frequency drive here, right there. Make sure I can get the video on it. It's an Allen Bradley single phase VFD, so it actually has 120 volts coming into it, and then it has 208 volt 3-phase going out to the motor, so I can vary the speed of the drive. So, because this is a 3-phase motor. So I did put it back together, and it is working quite well.
The noise is extremely minimal, just like it's a brand new pump. So that's great. I'll turn it on here. You can see the floor is a little wet because I got a little leaking that's going on the input side, but we'll turn it on here. And we got 10 hertz on it. And there it is at, at 35 hertz. It's running quite smooth. Turn it up a little higher here. So I'm pretty happy with the results. So I guess, that's somewhat it. Shut it off here. Oh, I could have shown you. I do have a gauge back there. I was running at about 800 psi when I was testing this out. So, and then what I've got, this black line here, actually goes outside underneath the garage door of my shop, and then goes out to a relief valve that I've got adjusted to about 800 psi. So I'm not going out to any nozzles at all. I'm just going out to a relief valve that regulates the pressure. Just a quick test setup of this unit. The supply line coming in. I've just got some water supply coming in that's at about 20 psi. So that should do it. Talk to you later.